All right, hello everybody. This is Mr. Gradius for our first video of the year, and it is on adding integers with the same sign, and this is part one. Okay, so this is part one of a two-part video. Okay, I should have probably included that in the title, but I think it's okay. So this is going to be part one. So what we're going to do is we are going to add integers with the same sign, and one of our key vocabulary terms here is just integers. So an integer is a whole number and it's positive or negative though. So what I mean by that is integers are like our counting numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 17, 27. Okay, but they're also the negative versions of those numbers as well. So -1 is also an integer, -2 is an integer, -17, and -27, -3. Okay, what is not an integer would be fractions. Fractions are not integers. Okay, nor are decimals. Decimals are also not integers. So it's that whole number that we would count with, and they're the positive and negative versions of those. All right, so what we're going to do is we are going to learn how to model adding integers with the same sign, and we're going to use counters first, and we're also going to use a number line. Now I know a lot of you are looking at 3 plus 4 and you go, Mr. G, this is super easy. 3 plus 4, that's just 7. We've been doing this math problem since second grade, and that's great. But what we're really going to focus on right now is I want to focus on how to model this with counters. So what we really have is I really have +3, and I'm adding that with +4. So because I'm adding +3 with +4, I'm going to model that with positive counters. So what I mean by counters is we're imagining that we have chips in front of us, and we're going to draw those out on our piece of paper. So if I have 3 plus 4, if I were to use 3 counter chips that are positives, I can draw 3 positive symbols. So I'm adding 3 positives here. So here's 1 positive 3, 2, 3. So that's 3 positives to represent the number +3. I'm also going to use my positive chips for 4. So I have 1 positive chip, 2 positive, 3, 4. And I am combining all of these chips together. So when I combine them all together, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 positives. So that means my answer is +7. The reason why we're using these counter chips is because it's going to make a lot more sense when we start combining positives and negatives together, and they really help us see what's going to happen there. So this is just me modeling. I have +3, I'm combining that with +4, so I have my 3 positives, my 4 positives. When I combine all those together, I have 7 positives. So we're just counting them. Now, let's look at what this looks like with negative numbers. So if I have -5 combined, I'm going to use the word combined for plus for addition a lot. If I have -5 plus -3, we can use counters to model -5 plus -3. So, but instead of using the positive counters, I'm going to use the negative ones. So to represent -5, I have 5 negatives here. So a negative sign represents a negative chip. So this is a negative, this is a negative, here's a negative, a negative, a negative. I have 5 negatives here. This is one way to represent -5. So I have 5 negatives, -5. I'm going to combine that, so I'm adding that with 3 negatives. So here's a negative, a negative, a negative. 5 negatives combined with 3 negatives. How many negatives do I have total? Well, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 negatives, so my answer is -8. So -5 plus -3 is -8. And this is how I would model it. Now, one common question that I get when we do this is, do we have to circle those counters? And the answer is no. I could just draw 5 negative signs, 3 negative signs, and then I know if I combine those, I have 8 negative signs. That's fine. I like to draw the circles because it shows the counters for me and it helps separate it, so I don't actually blend these lines together to show that I only have 4 negatives. Because if I got these two close together, like right here, then now it looks like I only have 2. Okay. So real quick, actually, I know I don't have this written down in your note takers as you're following along with this, but what you can do is you can just write this down, because I'm sure you have space, is just try this one on your own. You're going to have -2 plus -6. So I want you to practice, so I want you to pause the video, model this with your counters, and then come up with an answer, and then you can hit play and watch and see how you do. So try this, write this problem down, and try this one on your own. Okay, so hopefully you've already finished it, but here's how we would do it. So I'm going to model -2, and I'm going to combine that with -6 because it's saying to add these together. So I'm just going to figure out my 2 negative counters here. So I have 2 negatives, and I'm combining that with 6 negatives. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 negatives, 2 negatives. How many negatives do I have total? Well, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So my final answer would be -8, just like we had before. So if I combine 2 negatives with 6 negatives, I have a total of 8 negatives. So -2 plus -6 is -8. Okay? Now, you can also model on a number line. So when you model on a number line, here's a number line right here. We always start with the first number, and then we move spaces based on what the second number tells us to do, especially when we're adding. So I'm going to start here at -2. So my first one is -2. So I'm going to model above the number line because it helps me be able to see what's happening on the number line. So I'm going to start here at -2. So I'm going to put a dot right above -2 on my number line. Now what's happening here is it is telling me to add -5. Whenever we add a negative number, we move left on the number line. If I add a positive number, that's when I would move right on the number line. So when I'm adding a negative number, I move left on my number line. So if I start at -2 here, and I'm adding 5 more negatives, I'm going to move left 5 spaces. So that would be left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'm going to stop right here. Okay. And then to model it, I'm showing that I moved from here to the left, so I'm drawing kind of like an arrow. That's supposed to be an arrow. It's not a very good arrow, but that's what it's supposed to be. So I started at -2, and I moved left 5 spaces, and I ended on -7. So that means my answer for -2 plus -5 is -7. Now, you can absolutely do this right on the number line. I'm just doing it above it just to help show it a little bit better. But if you wanted to start at -2 and you went over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's totally fine. Okay? Cool. Let's look at another one. So I have -1 plus -7. So we're going to start from our first number on our number line. So on the number line, I got to find the -1. So that's left of 0, -1. Here, I'll use a black here. We'll do it on the number line. So I'm starting here on -1. I'm adding a negative number, so that means I got to move left on my number line 7 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I ended right here at -8. So I just modeled what -1 plus -7 is by recognizing that when I add a negative, I have to move left on my number line. Now, if I had 2 plus 6, I would have started over here at 2, but because I'm adding a positive number, I'm going to move right on the number line. So I still start on my first number, but then I move right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's it for modeling with the number line. So we can model with counters, or we can model with the number line when adding numbers with the same sign. Now, just jot down a couple things to remember. A couple things that I think that is important to remember is move left on the number line. We can draw an arrow. On the number line, I'll abbreviate number line. So move left on number line when adding a negative number. That is an important thing to remember, because when a lot of people see an addition sign, they automatically think they move right. But if you're adding a negative number, you have to move left on the number line. All right. And then if you have any other things that you want to add in this things to remember column, please do so. That'll help you out. And then if you have any questions that you don't understand that you want to bring to class, please write those down in your questions for the class section. And that is all. That was it for our first video. We made it. We got it done. Okay. So modeling with counters, let's use positive and negatives to represent our numbers. Modeling with a number line, if we add a negative, we go left. And if we add a positive, we go right. All right. I hope this video helped. And please let me know if you guys have any questions. Thank you for watching. Gradius out.